Good day everyone and welcome to this tutorial. This tutorial will be giving you an introduction to React Native. Now React Native is a framework that you can use to develop mobile application and give power and the strength to be able to deploy to different platforms with just one code base. You can deploy to Android, you can deploy to iOS, and even you can even deploy to web using what we call React Native with just one code. Now, why should you learn React Native? We know that in the world of mobile application development, we have different tools we can use. We have the Java, we have the Kotlin, we have the Flutter and the likes. But the question is, why should you use React Native unlike the other, maybe Swift or anything? Like, the reason I should learn React Native is that it allows you to be able to write for cross-platform. That means with just one code base, you can write for iOS and Android. You don't need to, like, if you are a company and if a company is hiring and they don't need to hire Android developers separately, hire iOS developers separately. With just the power of React Native, it gives you power to write just one code base and you're able to deploy to different platforms. And it also gives you native performance in the sense that it behaves like like an Android app. If you are deploying to Android, it behaves like an iOS app. You are deploying to iOS. It is not like a web view or anything, maybe converting a website to an application. No, it's behave natively. Now it has hot reloading in the sense that when you are working and there's a need for you to test, it gives you power and ability to be able to, once you save, you can see your changes in real time. And it also have large community and ecosystem. As you are coding or you are developing, there will be points where you'll be stuck, like something is wrong, you don't know what to do, you are facing an error. React Native has a lot of people writing there are a lot of people writing React Native. So once you are stuck or you don't know what to do, you have an error, you have tried to debug, you don't know what to do, just reach out to the community, go online, search, put your error there. There are a lot of people that have faced the same error that you are facing. They will definitely have given their solution and be able to move forward, unlike just languages that don't have a lot of people writing them. And the reason I should write React Native is because it has third-party library compatibility. There are a lot of things you want to do. Maybe you want to display charts in your application. Maybe you want to track real-time location. All these things might not be embedded in React Native, but it allows you to integrate third-party library. If you want to use map, you want to use any other thing that is not in React Native, it allows you to just install it as a node package and you use it directly. And it also has fast development cycle. That means within the shortest possible time, you can easily write your application, deploy it online, and you are good to go. And it's also backed by a powerful tech company that we know as Melta, and which we formerly called Facebook. It's when Facebook backs something or when Melta backs something, you should know that it is worthwhile learning. Now, the companies using React Native. Now, before we now jump to, like I said that in this tutorial I'm going to be showing you the syntax of React Native. That means you are going to learn how to get started with React Native. Now, do you know that when you learn React Native, it allows you to be able to learn remote work? Like, it allows you to be able to work remotely or on site for big tech companies, because it is not just a mushroom a tool, this React Native, because big and large tech companies are using this React Native, some of which you can see on the screen now. Facebook is using it, Instagram and the likes, they are using Skype is using it. That means when you learn React Native, it gives you more, it allows you to compete more in the job market to get jobs in this top company. Imagine working for Instagram, imagine working for Skype, then it is going to be a plus for you. Now, in this tutorial, like I said, I'm going to be introducing you to the syntax of React Native. Now, in this tutorial, I'm not going to be wasting time setting up the environment. I'm just going to go straight to an online tool that allow us to write the code and see the results in real time. But in the subsequent tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you how to set up your environment, how to make your environment, how to set it up in your IDE, and how to integrate your emulator. You can decide to be, emulator is like what you use to test your, you are developing for mobile, so you need to test with that mobile that you are developing for. So if you want to test on your system, you use emulator. You can also test by connecting your mobile phone to your system. It does not even have to be a wired connection, with just a wireless connection, and it's lightweighted. You can easily write React Native, and even if your system configuration is not very high, it allows you to test your application on your mobile phone by just connecting your mobile phone to your laptop or your system using a wireless connection, and on the go as you are working. Like I said, React Native supports hot reloading. As you are working, you'll be seeing your read time change from your system. So now let's go to it. Like the tool we are going to be using in this tutorial, because I don't want us to skip setting up our environment, but in the subsequent tutorial I keep promising you that I'm going to be looking at how to set up our environment. But for this tutorial, let's just focus on the syntax. Let's focus on the syntax of React Native. Now when you open this snack.expo.dev, the website is where you are going to be coming to. But for the first time, you are going to be seeing something like this. But I will suggest that you create an account and you try to sign in, because you might not be following this tutorial from A to Z, and at the point you might need to stop and digest some things, or maybe you need to stop and take some short break. Now it is advisable that you sign in, so that as you are working, your changes will be saving in real time. So once you click on this user icon, it brings this drop down that says login to Expo. So once you click on login to Expo, you will see the login form. But if you don't have an account, you will also see the sign up in this bottom part. So once you click on the sign up, you register your email, your username, and once you sign up, you can then log in and then will be working. So once you have created an account with Expo, it allows you to work and your changes will be saved in real time. Environment for my own. And now this is the introduction to React Native syntax. This is the environment that I'm going to be using. I have created my own account and I have tried to log in, but I've tried to clean everything up so that we're able to start from scratch. Now, React Native needs some basic knowledge of JavaScript, because React Native was built on JavaScript, and sorry, it was built on React, and React was built on JavaScript. So if you want to write React Native, you need to have basic knowledge of JavaScript, you need to have basic knowledge of React Native. But even if you don't have basic knowledge of React and JavaScript, then with this step-by-step tutorial, I think you should be able to get started writing it. So they are just simple English words that you can easily relate to it. We are starting with this SQ now. And it's time to start. And in this tutorial, to learn the syntax of React Native, I'm going to be writing a to-do list application. That means I'm writing an application that allows us to insert our to-do list and also update it and the like. So but we are working on the to-do list application. Now let me just start everything from the beginning. Now when you are writing, you can see that this is auto reloading. Once there is an error, you can see it. Let me bring it back. Like you can see that I am displaying a text of hello world, and this is the output. And you can see that I can decide to run it on my device, decide to run it on iOS, decide to run it on Android, decide to run it on web. With this just one code base, I can run it on different platforms, and that is the power of React Native that I'm telling you about. So once you write your React Native code, you can deploy it to any platform, you can deploy it to web. So it's not as if I've built a product for web, so I need to now convert it to application. No. Once you write it in React Native, you can deploy it to different platforms with just one code base, and that is the power that React Native is giving to you, developer and as a product builder. Now let us go straight to the tutorial, and I want to show you that power of auto reloading. Like as you are working, once your changes is saved, you'll be seeing the changes in real time. So if I decide to change this from hello world to maybe hello dev, now you will see that it's changed in real time. Like maybe I decide to change this from hello dev and I decide to change it to hello blue script, you will notice that it changed in real time. Now let us now get started with our application. Now the first thing is you need to import. You need to create your function first, so which will definitely be an arrow function. Definitely you can decide to use any function, but you know that the standard is like it's always good to use the latest things, and the latest standard of creating a function in JavaScript is currently an arrow function. So you need to export it as a default. Now once you create your function, this is the arrow function, the name of the function, then you create this brackets and these curly braces. So you now return the stuff that you want to display on your screen. So for example, maybe I want to display a text on my screen, I need to come and import a module from React Native, and that tells me that I need to import text. This text, like the names imply, is used to display information to the user to see. Maybe you want to display a text, a string, some words, some names and the likes. You use text from what we are coding, which is React Native. So having imported this text module, so I'll just come and wrap the text I want to display to the user here. So you can see that it's just like I'm writing HTML code. The opening tag is text and the closing tag is also text, but now it's not just HTML now because I'm importing it from React Native so that I can have that power of native performance. So let me come back to the hello word that we put the other time, hello word, and that's for that. Now, like I said, we are going to be writing a to-do app. Now, the first thing I want us to do now is I want us to set up our folder structure. Now, setting up our folder structure means that we need to put things in the right order. Now, there is no standard way to set up your folder structure, but it is always advisable to make things understandable. That means if I open your code, I should not be looking around and say, okay, where is this, where is this, where is this component? Like, you know that React and React Native, they are component based. Okay, this is the login component, this is the button component, this is the header component. So you divide so that it makes it possible for you to reuse it. And that is why many of our tech world now, they are going the way of React Native and React.js. Now, for that structure, there's no standard way, like I said, but it's always good to make your code understandable so that if there's any need for you to transfer your code to another developer to work on, you should not give that developer an headache of, okay, where is this, where is the screen, where is the component, where do I look for if I'm looking for the login. You should make your code well understandable. And now, the further structure I'm going to be using is I'm going to be creating the first folder, which is the component folder. The component folder, that means the part of the system that I can use several times. So the components folder, I'm going to be creating another folder which is called the screens. Like the name involved, like it's just like the pages. If you are familiar with web application or web application development, you know you have different pages: the home page, the about us page, the contacts page. But for this mobile application, you're going to be working with screen. So okay, the welcome screen, the login screen, the registration screen. You can decide to call it page, but just make sure that it is well understood if you need to transfer it to another person to work on, or maybe you need to have some collaborators to work on your code or your applications together. So you should not structure things in the wrong way. So we have two folders now, but I don't want this my screen folder to be a subfolder of company. I want it to also be in the root folder. So what I just do is I'll just drag and drop it in the root folder. You can see now that this components folder and the screens folder are all in the root folder. That means I can easily access them. But take note of something here, that the app.js file is the starting point of my application. That is where my application will start running. The first thing that once I start my React Native app, the first thing that my app will be looking for is this app.js file. That is where I will kickstart everything I want to work on. Now I will start with these screens. Like, okay, the first screen I want to see is the to-do screens. So in this screen folder, I'm going to be creating a new file. Like I said, that we are working with JavaScript, upon which React was built upon, and also this is React Native. So React Native was built on React.js. So I'm going to be creating a JavaScript file which I'll be calling to-do screen.js. So .js means .javascript. So the first thing I'm going to be creating, like you saw in the app.js file, is that I will create an arrow function with the name that I want to export it as. So the to-do screen, and I'll create the arrow function and I'll export it as default. Now, don't forget your return, anything you want this arrow function to give to the user as an output. Now, the return. Now, let's just display something here. Let me introduce another module in React Native, which is called view. Now, this view in React Native, so you also import it from React. Native. So this view is like a container that used to contain some elements of your React Native code. Just like if you are familiar with HTML, you know about div. Now this view is like the div equivalent of HTML. So it's just like a container that used to camp some elements of your code, of your React Native code. So I'm going to be displaying this view, but let me use view. So I will write it as an HTML tag, HTML, and so now this view, I will now import another module from React Native, which is called text. So the text now, the text can then be this is so anything you want to display as text to the user, I'm going to write it here. This is the to do screen. Now you notice something, that despite the fact that we have been working on this particular file, the output that we have is still hello world. So what you need to do now is, how do we make our system or our application to display what we have here? Don't forget I told you that this app.js file is the starting point of the application. So that means we need to now go back to this app.js file and now import this screen that we have, so that we are going to be able to integrate it to our app.js file. Now I'll come to this app.js file. I will now import the to-do screen. Now how do I import it? Don't forget that I've exported it as default to-do screen. So irrespective of, so I'll just come to this app.js and I'll say import to-do screen, from, come to the root folder dot slash. You can see that I have some IntelliSense that, okay, I'm going to the screens slash to do screen.js. So that is where I have my to do screen. I've been able to import it. Then what do? I'll just come to this my return file, and I'll, instead of displaying, okay, let me just make the hello world to still be there, and I'll now embed my to do screen here. So now, since I'm not putting anything in between the tag, there's no need to make it opening tag and closing tag. So once I just create it once, I'm not putting anything in between, I just close it back. So, but notice something here, that I'm getting an error. So the meaning of that error is that, like I said, view is used to put your elements in React Native together, like a container to put all your elements together. Now this return should not have two elements. Like currently I have text and I have to do. Everything should be inside one container. So now what do? I'll just import my view module from React Native. So view, like I said, is used as a container to insert your elements, to compile your elements together in React Native. So I'll then wrap this text and to do screen inside view. So I'll open the tag and I'll close the tag. So I'll put it inside view. So I'll just copy this, and you can see that the error is gone now. Because so the reason why we have that error is because we should not have more than one element. So even if I have one element, I should put it inside one container, which the div give me chance to achieve. Now let us now go straight to building our tool. So now let me remove this text hello world, because now everything I want to be working on now has to do with the to-do screen. I want us to build something like a to-do list. Now let's come back to the to-do screen, which is what we want to work on now. Now in this video we'll just work on this one page, but subsequently I will teach you how to navigate from one page to the other using different forms that we have, maybe a React Navigator or anything, or even Xcode 2 can help you to navigate from one screen to the other. But here we just limit ourselves to this one screen, because the focus of this tutorial is just to make you familiar with the components, the syntax of React Native, and you bear with me that currently you know about view now, you know what view is doing in React Native, you know what text is doing in React Native, and that is how to get started when you are writing any code. Just get to know the syntax and how to use it, and like that you will to use it for your own different solution. Now let us build the to-do screen. Now like I said, we are going to be having the view. Now inside the view, let me have another view. Like, okay, I'm going to be having another component. So once you import it once, you don't need to import it more than one. You don't need to import it again. Like since I'm using view 2 times now, I should not now come, and since I'm using view, I should come and import view again. That will be wrong. So that will be wrong. I'll just import it once. You can see now that it will definitely give me an error that I've imported view before, so I don't need to import it again. So once I import it once, then I'm going to go. Now in this view I want to have something like I want to be able to get something from the user. Like I want the user to be able to enter something. Like this is a CRUD application where the user can create, they can read it, they can update it, and they can delete it. That is what we want to build in this application. So now for the user to be able to create, that means we need to be able to relate with our user. That means we need to get entry from the user. And how do we get entry from the user? We use another React Native component that is called text inputs. To get input from the, just like we have form in HTML, to get input from the user or to get entry from the user, you will use another React Native component or React Native module, which is called text input. So just like we have been doing for the other components or for the other module, we just come to this place and we import the text input module. Import the text input module, and we just, so you can see now that as the name implies, okay, I want to get text from the user. So now I will just come here and I will use my text input. Note that this text input, we don't need to make it an opening and closing tag, since it's just to take input from the user. It has some props, some property that define the text input, because we need to define the placeholder. The placeholder is what the user see before they start entering something into the text input, and we also need to enter the value. That means, okay, as the user is changing something, what value should the text input be? And we also need to have the unchanged text. That means as the user is changing, what is the event that we want to be triggering? Now let us start with the placeholder. Now don't forget, we are still going to style it. So you see that you are not seeing it because we have not styled it. So very soon we are going to be styling it to make it more attractive to the user. I'm going to be teaching you how to style in React Native. Of course, we have different ways you can design to style. There's a way you can embed Tailwind. If you know Tailwind is like a CSS library that you can embed. Like I said, that React Native allow you to import third-party libraries. So if you feel like, oh, I have knowledge of Tailwind, I want to use it in my React Native application, it's very easy. What you just need to do is just install it and you use it. Even you can even use Bootstrap in your React Native application with the power of third-party integration. But currently, we will not be dealing with Tailwind because I want this tutorial to be focused on learning the syntax of React Native. So I'll be teaching you how to style React Native, just like you are writing normal CSS of React Native. That's what we are going to be dealing with. So we are going to be having a placeholder for this. So the placeholder can be maybe enter the to do, and we are going to be having the value. The value is, okay, you can see down that we have something. So you're like, okay, now let me clean this value. All these are called properties. Properties is, you know that you cannot just say text input. You are definitely using text input to do something or to achieve a purpose. So the properties help you to define how you want it to be used by the user and how to get anything the user enter into the text input back from them. Now when I enter the placeholder, you can see now if I highlight on it, I have something. If I start entering, you can see now that I can enter some text, but this text is still of no use, and the text input too is not nice to build. That means it's not very nice, or it's not very beautiful. It's not, we have not designed it, or we have not styled it. So now let us come to, so that is the placeholder. Placeholder is what the user will see before they start entering the text, or before they start entering the value. Now the value property now is so that once the user enters something, we need to be able to get some value. Now we are also going to be having unchanged text. Unchanged text. So this unchanged text is like, as the user is entering something, okay, let me comment out this value first. As the user is entering some values, there will be this, if unchanged event is an event that will be triggering, like it will be coming up once the user enter a, the event will come up so that it can update and get the value from the user, so that the user will not just enter something and I feel like what I've entered is gone or it is of not use. Now I'm going to be writing another, in this unchanged text I'm going to be writing another arrow function, which is set out. Okay, let me create something here now. Let me just comment it. Now it's good that in React Native, if you know React.js, there's something that we call use state hook, like use state from React. So you import this from React. So you import use state. So sometimes you need to update some values based on what the user is entering. So it's good that you use the use state. Now apart from this use state loop from React, we also have some other ones like use effects and so on and so forth. But for this one, we're only using the use state. That means as user is entering some value, we want to be updating a particular variable based on what they are updating, based on what they are entering. Now this use state, you need to now come to your this to do screen. Let me try to space it. This to do screen, you need to now come here and now define it as, okay, constant, maybe to do text, to do text, to do text, and I'll now say set to do. Notice that just the only thing that is different here is this is the variable name that I'm trying to update, and the function that I'll be using to update it is this set. So after writing this set, I'll just come to this to do text and I'll just copy it so that you know that you don't just write anything. You cannot just say this is to do text and I should now come and say set text. This will definitely not work. I will not come here and now say set text. This will definitely not. So I need to use that same variable I used for the first element, but just that after the set, the next letter must be a capital letter. So that is just it. Even if it is a capital letter, it still need to be a capital letter so that React can be able to differentiate it from every other variables. So to do text, set to do text, now we'll now define it as use state. And the default variable of this set to do text is I'm going to be setting to an empty string. So that is it. So I'm setting it to an empty string. So that is what I'm trying to do here. So that means by default or initially, this to do text is going to be an empty string. And if I need to update this to do text, all I just need to do is just call this set to do text and it will be updated. So that means every time the user now enters something in this text input module of React Native, I want to be triggering this set to do text so that it will be updating the value of to do text. Now every time the user enters something, I'm going to be getting the text that the user enter as the parameter. I'm getting the text that the user enter as the parameter, and once the user updates the text, I'm going to be calling the set to do text, and I'm going to be setting it as the text that the user enter. So since I have the text already, I can now enter the value that I want this particular text input to have. So I will just set the value to this to do text. So that is it. That is just it. So all you just need to know here is that you have your text input module from React Native, and the text input module from React Native has different properties or props, which is called the placeholder, the value, and the unchanged text. So we have some other ones, but in case you need some other, you can just go to React Native documentation and just learn about it. But for now, we have everything that we need to work with in this module. Now let us now come back. Now we have been able to learn some other more components, which is the text input. I want us to learn about button, because there's now you are going to build an application that you will not be needing the button. So now, like we have been doing for the previous components or modules, we need to come to this place and import a module from React Native called button. So button. So I believe you know button when you see it on your web page. This is something like a button. Now let us now come to this. So now this is in the container. So we want the text input and the button to be in the same container, which is this view. Now I've been able to import button. Now I'll now come here. I'll now say button. Now this button too is a set closing tag. So everything I need to do, I'm going to be defining it as a proper. So you can see that I have my button here already, but I'm going to still be styling it so that it will be looking nice. Now, of course, you should know that even this button that we are seeing here, that Expo is giving us, it has a value that is save. So your button should have something that is telling the user that this is what this button will do if you click on it. So I will just say the title. So how do you define that? Is that you use the property title. Okay, let me come to the next line so I can be able to follow along very well. So title. So the title can be maybe add to do, and also you can also add you can see that we have a button, It's just that the button is like taking the entire screen, but we are still going to be styling it. But at least you can see that we are able to import it from React Native and we are using it. So, and we can see the effect in real time. So now every time the user click on this button, what should happen? What should happen every time the user click on this button? And for that, don't forget that every time the user press or enter text for this text input, we use the unchanged text event. Now the same thing for button. Anytime the user press the button, what event will happen? And the event is on press. Event is on press. So on press. So that means every time the user enter or click this button, we want something to happen. Okay, for now, let me just say console.log. Okay, let me use an arrow function so that this button will not be clicking by default. I won't be using an arrow function. I will say console.log button clicked. Now that is just it. I don't know. Let me try and click it, but let's just leave it there for now. Now let us now go straight to styling. Let us try to style these our text input and our button. And how do you style in React Native? As you style with, you import another module from React Native, just like you have HTML and you have CSS. So the same thing in React Native, we also have styling in React Native, and that is what we call style sheet. So you come to this your React Native application and you import, or from your React Native, you import a module that is called style sheet. So which is used to style your React Native application. So now it's good that, okay, I want to define the style for each of my elements here in my after returning. So I'm going to be saying const styles is equals to style sheet that I've imported dot create. So I want to create a style sheet for this particular function. I'm going to be creating a style sheet for this particular function. So you can see how I define it. The styles is equals to the style sheet dot create, which is a function. So now in this styles, I'm going to be having like a container. That means for the entire screen, let me just define something like a container. So just notice that there's some similarities between this style, the way we write this style sheet and CSS, but it's different. It's kind of different. Just watch and you'll be able to see the difference. So we are going to be having a container. This is like the class, or this is like the property of the style. So when we be having a container, and so I'm dividing it as an object, and the object, the first thing is I want the container to be displayed as a flex. I want to be displayed as a flex, and I want to add the padding all around it. You know that padding is space in between the component of the elements of the component. So the padding here now is 16. Now I can see that this thing is telling me my code will not reach here, so that means I'm putting it at the wrong place. So let me remove it from this place, and then I will put it after this place. Yeah, I put it outside of my function, so that I will just import it into my function like that. So now I have the styles here. Now how do I use it? Now I've been able to define the component. Now the reason I'm getting this warning is because it's telling me that it was defined but not used. Now how do I use it? So now I'll now come to this my first parent container, which is the view, and I'll now define a property for it which is called style. So style, I will now open a curly braces, and I will now say the styles that are defined down here, dot, which property am I taking from it? So you can see that I've already defined container. So I want the class container to be the parent container or the parent div. So you can see now that I've been able to style and there's no error. But the style is showing. You can see now that if I remove this style property, you can see that the elements are joining to the body of the out, like the display screen. There's no space there's no some breathing space for it. But when I add that padding, you can see that there's space in between the element, and that is the parent space. You can see that we have been able to style our React Native component using this style sheet module that we imported from React Native. So this is like the raw CSS file from React Native. So we are displaying the container as flex, and we are adding a padding of 16. So let's now come and style our input. So don't forget that we have two containers, or we have two views, or two, that is still container and view. So the first one is parent, and the second one is the container that is holding the text input and the button. Now let us now come straight to style that to just like it's like an object. Don't forget that we are writing a JavaScript code. Even if it is a CSS file, we are still writing a JavaScript code. So now so we need to put a comma after this curly braces. Now we will now call another class. It can be anything. For me, I just decided to call it input container. Input container, so I can be able to differentiate it from the first container. Now this input container, I want to add the flex direction. So the flex direction, I want to be a row. So that means I want them to be on the same row, so that instead of the input being on one line and the button on another line, I want them to be on the same line. So I'll make it to be a row. Now I need to make this a string of row. Now I will also add a margin button. Now notice something here, that if it is CSS, you are going to say flex direction, flex that direction, but that is not allowed in this React Native that we are writing. What you just need to do is, instead of writing, it's still the same property like flex direction, but it's just that you need to write it as camel case. That means that first letter starting with small letter, and the next word that you are trying to join with the first word should now start with capital letter. So that's the difference. So it's still the knowledge of your CSS, but it's just that when you are writing it, you write it in camel case. The first letter is small letter, and the subsequent words will be in capital letter. So it's still the same. So if you know CSS, React Native is not cancelling the knowledge of your CSS that you know. It's still usable. It's still much more valid. Now let's now add margin button. Now guess right. I believe you guess it right. Margin button. Normally in CSS we are going to be writing margin dash button. But because we are writing a JSS file here, or JS file, we are going to be writing it as camel case, margin bottom, and the margin bottom, let us just say is still 16. Now we have created the class. Now let us now go and use it in our code. How do we use it? The same way we use this first one. We just define a property called style, and we open the curly braces and we define styles dot. Now it is not container again, so the class I define it to be is input container. So input container. So you can see that the IntelliJ is even doing a good job. So you see now that both the text input component and the button, they are now on the same line, and they have some spacing at the right hand side. Now let us now style our input, because the user might not know that there's an input value here, so that the user will know, and we make our application more appealing to the user. Now I believe you are learning the React Native here. We have learned some components from React Native. We have learned text, we have learned view, we have learned text input, we have learned button, and now we are learning how to style our React Native app. Now let us come to another class. Let me say this class is input. So notice I just put a comma after this curly braces, and I define a new class, and I have a full column, and I open a curly braces to define the property of that class. So I'm going to be having this input to be flex, a flex one. So that means, and the height, I want the height to be maybe height 40, and I want to add some margin right. Don't forget, when you're writing two words, you need to write it as camel case, margin right. So you need to write it together, but it's still the same CSS. Margin right, let me make the margin right to be 8, and I'm going to be putting some padding horizontally, so padding horizontal, let me make the padding horizontal to be 8, and also the border width to be, okay, let me try and write it. Border width, let me make that to be 1. So you can see that we have been able to style, but I want us to do something. Let me try and comment this out first. Commenting it out, but let me comment everything out. Now let me go and attach it to my file now. So that means I need to come here. It's still the same way. Style property, add the curly braces, and import the style that you have defined. So just say style is equals to styles dot. So the style that we are using here is input. So because we define the class as input, now you can see that none of this style has been applied. So if I comment out this flex, now you can see now that it has pushed the button to the right hand side. Now let me make the height to be 40. Okay, now the height to be 40. Now I want to add a margin right of 8, I want to add the margin right of it. I want to add the border width. That means I want to have some border around it. I want to have some border. You can see now that we have some border around it. And I want to add to, in this this placeholder is not nice the way it is at the side of the container. So I need to add some padding horizontally. So you can see that these things, I can see now that the text input is looking nice, and the user can definitely know that they need to enter something here to be able to proceed. Now let us style our button. Okay, I think the button is looking nice like that, so there might not be any need to style it. So now, yeah, I think we are progressing with our React Native knowledge, and now let us now. So the users, we have defined an input and the button now, so that the user can enter to do. Don't forget that on press we are currently console logging button click, but now I want us to find a way to, when the user enter to do, I want us to take it from the user, so that once the user enter it, we take it from the user and we are able to display it to the user. Now I want us to define a function here, and we are going to make the function to be an arrow function, and we are going to say add to do to be an arrow function, and the add to do, we are going to be getting now this on press. So this on press, instead of console logging, we are going to say just trigger add, just trigger on press, just called add to do. So that means once this button is pressed, this function will be called or will be invoked. Now if this function is invoked, what do we want to do? And let us define the function. The first thing first is we are going to be getting this to do text, because the user will have entered, okay, I want to eat. That is what the user want to do. And when we click, then we will take it from the user. Now that means we are dealing with this text, with this to do text. So we need to come here. The first thing is, it's always good to trim some white space from the user entry. So you need to now say text to do text dot, you need to trim it with a JavaScript function that is called trim. So this dot trim function, what it is doing for you is that it will clear some white space before and after the text. To clear it, maybe the user say, okay, space, and I say, I want to say go to gym. Like now, once the user enter it, this space too will be considered, but we don't want it to make our app not look nice. So we need to clean every white space before, and maybe the user now come here and says put some space. So we need to clean the starting white spaces and the ending white spaces. So that is what this trim function in JavaScript is doing. So that's why I said you need to know JavaScript to some extent to be able to write React Native code. Now, having trimmed that, now notice something, that after trimming it, you need to have text input. That means if the user just put some, okay, let me clean this. If the user just put some space and I click on add to do, this will not do anything, because we don't want the user to be able to just enter a void entry and just click on the add to do. We want them to be able to add something tangible or something reasonable. Now let us now come straight. So having confirmed that the user has entered a value and not an empty value, we can then say, okay, set to do. Okay, now I want us to do something now, because we are going to be displaying the to do item to the user. So we need to define an array that is going to be taking the to do list of the user. So let us do something here and say, and let us define another state here, which is going to be the to do items. That is, so the same way we have been setting it. So this use state, we destructure the two values. We destructure to do items into this array, and we destructure the function that allows to set that particular item. So this is the to do items, and set, like I said, the first thing for capital letter after this set, to do items, and we're going to be defining it as use state, and the initial value of these to do items is going to be an empty array, because we want it to be an array, so that once the user enters it, we push it into the array, and when we need to give it back to the user, we just look through the array and we give it back to the user. So I'm going to be making this to be an empty array initially. Now once the user enters the to do, then we need to push it into this to do item. How do we do that? We just call this set to do items, Now setting it, I will define an array. Now the first thing first is, this is JavaScript now. Just try to follow. Now the first thing first is I need to destructure the previous to do item that I have into this array. Now to destructure into an array, I will need these three dots. 1, 2, 3. So I will then to do items. So that means if the user enter a new to do, it should just append or be attached to the previous ones. It should not overwrite the previous one. So that's why I have to destructure first before now setting the new one that the user is just entering. So destructure the previous to do items, and then I will now set the new ones. So the new ones, I'll define it as an object, and the first property is ID. I want each of the to do item to have a unique ID. And to do that, I need to set a property from JavaScript which is called date, and date does now, so that each of them will have unique ID. I'm just using, you know that if you enter a to do item 1 second ago, it should be different from the one you enter another seconds now. So that's why I need to use date to set a unique ID for the to do item. So I'll set date to the present date, which is date dot now. This is JavaScript, date dot now, and I'm going to converting it to a string. So to convert to a string in JavaScript, you just say dot to string, so that it will not be displaying as a date. So this will make each of it to do, even if it is the same text, to have a unique ID. Now after the ID, I'll set another property called text. So the term is the text of the input of text of the to do text. So I will then set it to do text to do text dot, let me trim it because I don't want it to have white space. So that is that. Now you can see it's very simple. The first thing now, I destructure the to do items into this to do item. When I'm setting the new value, I destructure the to do items. Now having a new property, I set the ID, then I set the text. So that makes it sensible. Now after doing that, so since users have entered the to do item, once they click add to do, then the input or the text input field should be void. That means should be empty, because if the user want to enter another to do, they should not start cleaning, or they should not just backspacing the to do item that they have entered before, because that will make us to have an application that has a bad user experience. So having done that, I want us to now make the to do text field to be void. How do I do? I just set to do text to be an empty string, and that will make the input field to be void. And let's try it now. Let me comment out this set to do text first, and you see the effects in action. But we will not look through the to do items for now. That's what we're going to next. Now let's do something now. We have been able to attach an event to our button, and now let us try something now. I want us to now say, okay, I want to code as our to-do list, and we click on add. You can see that this function has been called, though behind the scene, but you will see it in action very soon. This function has been called, or it has been evoked, but this input is still the same thing. Now to clean it out, I'll just put this set to do item to an empty string, and I'll just, if I click on it again now, maybe I say I want to code, and I click on add to do, you can see that the empty string or the text input field is now an empty string. So that means it has been erased, or it has been cleaned out. Now let us now go straight. Since users enters a to do item or something they want to do, we need to now display to them as they are entering it. Now we are going to be using another React Native module, which is called flat list. Which is called what? Flat list. This flat list is used to loop through an array. It's like it is used to loop through an array in React Native. So it's still the same way we have been using other modules or other components in React Native. So that is called flat list. Flat list. So it is used to loop through an element in React Native. Don't worry, you are getting there, and I believe that you are getting. So it's very simple: view, text input, button, and before you know it, you are familiar with every component in React Native. And in case you need to learn any more component, and maybe based on your needs, you can just go to documentation and find out what you need. But now, what I need now is I want to look through this to do item that the user has entered. How do I do that? I use a module from React Native which is called flat list. Now, text and button container. So I will now come here. I will now write my flat list that I've imported from React. Flat list is also, it's going to be a self-closing tag too. So it is only the property that is going to be different. So the property of flat list is I will need to define the data that I want to display, that I want to look through. So the data is going to be to-do items. So the to-do item is the arrays of to-do that I want to display. And I'm also going to write the key extractor. You know that when you are looking through, if you know map in JavaScript, it's every item of the array that you are looking through, it must have unique ID. They must not be the same, so that React can easily manipulate your DOM very well. So you need to do something here now. You need to write the key extractor. That means each of the list, each of the item that you are looping through in the array must all have unique ID. So how do you do that? You use the key extractor. This is React Native. Now, the key extractor, each of the items of the, this is the item, like this is the array, sorry, the to do items is the array, and each of them as it's looping through the first one, I'm tagging the name item to it. That means when it loop through the to do items array, the first one will be a variable item. I can decide to change it to maybe element. It can be anything, but elements looks coding related, but let's just make it so I will not be using the reserved words in code. So let's use items. So that means each of the elements as it's looping through it is I've attached the variable name item to it. So that means that I will now say the ID that I want to extract as the key of this loop is going to be item.id. Take note of the fact that when I'm defining the to do items here, I define the ID as a unique date so that it will be unique for every input field, every entry, and I also define the text. So this is the ID that I'm using here. This ID is what I'm using here. I believe you get it. We need to now render it. Take note of the first property, the data that you want to look through, the key extractor, that means the unique ID of each of the elements of the array. Now we need to now render the item. Render item. So we need to render the item, and rendering the item will also be equal to curly braces, and each of the item we are going to be having each of the iterator. That means the element of the elements, I attach the name item to it. Now, attend the name item to it, and I'm going to say it's going to be an arrow function with a bracket. Now, each of them, let me just display a view here. Let me just display a view as a container, and I'm now going to say at every loop just display maybe item dot what now, dot text, right? This is where I'm getting the text from. Item dot text. Now let me now try to enter something. Now let me say, okay, I want to, if I enter, you can see now we have the I want to code. If I enter another one now, I say okay, go to gym. I enter it. You can see now I'm able to enter the to do, and I'm looping through. If I'm getting excited because we are now we are going from one level to the other, and we are coding our React Native. But here I want us to learn one concept in React Native. That is the component. The fact that the component React Native is component based. Now I don't want to just write some. You know that I said we'll be able to edit it and we'll be able to delete it, but I don't want us to write that functionality here because we might need it in another place. So that is the power of component based tool, which is React Native that we are using. Now I want us to use a component to display our to-do item. So that's why I want us to come to this component so that we can be able to use it again in case we need to use it in another place. So I want us to define a file that is called to-do item.js. Now the first thing first, when you create your file, create an arrow function to do item, create an arrow function which will be equals to, and you export the arrow function as default. Export the arrow function as default to do item. Now, don't forget your return. So let's just return something. Let's just return. Okay, let me import view. I believe you should even be going ahead of me now. Like, you should know what we are doing. We are repeating the same thing. That's the power. Once you know it forever. From from React from React Native from React Native. So let me just display the view here. The view, and now I'll just say okay to do item. Now having done that, I'll then come to my to do screen. Let me import it. So the first thing is, after we have created the component, anywhere you want to use it, you import it first. Now let's come here. I'll try to import it to do item from from components Okay, I need to, you know that this to do screen is not in the root folder, so I need to go out of that screen once. So that is what this double dot is doing. If I need to be in that same folder, I'll just use one dot. Sure, do you get? Like, if you want to go out of that folder, you know that this is where I am currently, so I need to go out of this screen folder and be at the root folder so that I can enter this components folder. How do I do that? I need to do it through double screens. So and I enter the components folder, and I enter the to do item file. Now having done that, so in my to do item, I've been able to import it, and I'll come and use it where I am looping through the to do. So I'll just put it here. So now every time I enter a new to do, because I'm just displaying this is to do item, to do item. So let me say to do one, because we are not displaying it here. Yeah, I can see that I have to do two. So now instead of this is what I'm displaying now, because the why we have that is because this is what we put there. So it is whatever you instruct your code to do, that is what it will definitely do. But now instead of just displaying a constant word, we want to be able to display to the user whatever the item they are passing, or whatever the item they have entered. So how do we do that? I want us to now enter the property that we want to pass across to the to-do item. The first thing I want to pass to the to-do item is I want us to pass the item. Don't forget that every element of the array is what we tag the name item to. So let's pass the item as a property to the components to do item. So let's pass it as item. Now I want us to pass another function, another thing, but let's not do that yet, because when we get to the deleting, we are currently working on, we have been able to create, but now I want us to be able to reach successfully. But now when we get to the point of deleting or updating, we get to that place. But now let us just make it work by passing the item property. Now let us come to our to do item, and let us let us work on it. Now don't forget that we have passed the element, we have passed the property item to it. So I need to now come to this place. Anytime you are passing a property to your component, you need to come here and the structure, you need to come here and import it. So I can decide to import it as okay props, and I will now say okay I now come here, the property I'm getting, I now say const item is equals to props dot item. Still the same thing, but instead of doing that, I'll just open a curly braces here, and the first thing I'm importing is I import item, so I'll just get it direct. So having to say props dot and make my code a bit messy, I'll just use item straight off. We want to use our view. We have been able to import our item. But now let's import our view. Now this view, we are going to be using something here again, because but before we do that, let us just display the text to the user back. So any text that the user has entered, the text the text so the text, the item dot, don't forget that we define ID and text in the item. So dot text. So now with that, we should be able to see our any to do that we enter. So let me say I want to code now. I want to code, and I put it. You can see that now that instead of just displaying to do item, I have there I want to code there. Now I want us to now do something. I want us to make the screen or the display more nice and more attractive. Now by styling it. Now by styling it, I want us to, once the user is done with the to do, we want to be able to, so we have been able to read it now. Like if I enter, I want to go to change. So everything I enter now, the user is read. So now we have been able to achieve 2 out of our 4 steps process that we are going. So we have been able to create, we have been able to read. So now we need to update. So we need to update now. So we are halfway done. We have been able to create, we have been able to read. Now it is now time to be able to update. So we should be able to update our to do item. We should be able to update our to do item. So and how do we do that? But let's just add some. Let's bring something now. Anytime the user press on this, to do item, we want to be able to do something, and that makes us to bring a new React Native component which is called touchable opacity. So that is like a button, but it's not a button. So it's just make it respond to the user's click. So every time the user click on the elements, should be able to get a response from them. So come back to this React Native, then we import a module that is called touchable opacity. So this allows user, this relates with the user in the aspect of clicking. It allows users to be able to click on an element, and when the user click on the element, we are able to trigger an event, and that is called touchable opacity. Touchable opacity. Now, after having this view, I want us to have our touchable opacity. Let's bring this view here. So now this touchable opacity, don't forget that we definitely want to use it to get the click event from the user. So anytime you want the user to click on something and get a response from it, you use touchable opacity in React Native. So now we are going to be having a property which is called onPress. OnPress, I want to just, for now, just console log pressed. Just console log pressed. Now once you console log press some icons, so that when the user is done with a particular to do, we display another icon, a particular icon. When they are not done, we display a particular icon. And that's going to, we are going to be doing that with the help of material icons. And the material icons, we are going to be getting it from expo vector. Now just watch as I do that. Now, so now we are going to be importing an icon. So that means we are learning how to use icon even in this tutorial. So we are going to be getting material icons from that's what I said about React Native, that it allows you to be able to integrate third-party libraries. So you can see now that I need something that is not embedded in React Native. So that is why I need to go and import it from an external or third-party library. And in this case, the third-party library I'm going to be using is expo vector icons. That is the third-party library I am going to be using. And let us see that in action. So after our touchable opacity, let us bring the material icons as a self-closing tag, since we will not be putting anything between. So it's going to be a self-closing tag. So you are going to divide the name. Let us just divide the name firstly as, let's make the name to be checkbox. So let's check it in action. To do one. Okay, we have not styled it. You can see now that we have it here. You can see that we have the checkbox to show that the user is not ready to do, but we still find a way around that. Now let's give it a size. Let's increase the size to maybe 24. Now let's change the color. Let's change the color to maybe green. Green would be nice. let's make the style. Okay, let's not style. We are going to still be styling it. I believe you now know how to style in React Native using the normal style sheet, that component that you are importing from React Native. Now let's see what we have added in action. Now let me just say to do one. I can see now that we have a green checkbox icon, that the material icons is giving us the power to leverage on. Now let us now go straight to the let's now style it now. So how do you style? The first thing is you import style sheets from React Native. So you now come to, after your curly braces, you're going to say const size is equals to style sheet dot create. So you see the same thing we are doing like the previous one we did the other time. So let's style the parent container here now. Parent container, and you can define it again because the files are different. So now the parent container, don't forget that the parent container from our first file has been defined as a flex, so we don't have to define this one as a flex again, but let's define the flex direction here so that everything will be on the same row. Let's define the flex direction to be a row so that they are going to be on the same row. Let us align the items. Let us align the items to the center. So that means vertically they will be at the center. So that's the meaning of align items. So it's still your normal CSS. So now let us add some padding. So padding is the spacing in between the container and the elements. So the padding is 10, and let us add some margin at the bottom. Let us add some margin at the bottom to be 10, and let us give it some background color to make it look nice. Let us give some. You can see that it's still the same CSS, but just that I'm writing it as camel case. So let's give some background color. It can be anything, but let's just make it look nice by just using a creative color. And let us make it to have some border radius. So border radius is just some curve at the four corner of your element. So border radius, you can see that it's still the same CSS, but just some different way of writing it. So let us now come and import it now. So how do you import it in your element? Just add the property style to be equal to a curly braces, and you now say styles, which is what we define here. Styles dot container. So let's see that in action now. So if I say code 1 and add it as a to do, you can see now that we have the style has been applied. We have still not been able to achieve perfection. Now let us go further now and style the icon. Let us style the icon. Let us make the icon to have some margin at the right. Margin right to be 10. And let us style the text. Let us style the text to also have a flex of 1 so that it will be on the same line with the icon. And when the user is done, I want to be able to strike through. That means I want to add some cross. I want to cross out that they are done with this to do item. So I'll use the strike through class. So we call it class in CSS. So let me just use what you are related with or what you are familiar with. So let me call the class strike through, and I'm going to say the CSS text decoration line. So the text decoration line is going to be a line through. That means I want to cross it out once the user is done. Now having done that, let me now come and I can just close this with a semicolon, but it's negligible. Now let's now come and style our elements. Now I want to have this material icon. I want to have some style now. Just what I like. Okay, sorry, margin right 10. Yeah, that the error should go now. If you check something now, let me just say code 1. So even if the user does not say they are through with that task, it's marking as done. So we should only display this icon only when the user is done, and we should not display it when the user is not done with the to-do list or to-do item. So what do we do in this case is that now the name, we are going to change the name of the material icon based on a particular condition. So now let me define that condition now. I'm going to be using another state now. I'm going to be using the state. Oh, sorry, let me import it first. Don't forget that the other time we import use state from use state from where? Okay, guess it right. React Native. Import it from React Native. So I'm going to now come here. Let me just say it's done. If the user is done with the to do, so it's still the same, method. Use state, and default will be what? Default will be false, because once you have entered the to do item, it should not be done by default. So this is to get if the user is done with the to do item. So now I will now come here and say, okay, my name should be based on, so I put this as, okay, I want to write some logic here. I'll say if it's done, I want it to be a checkbox. That means if the user is done with to do, I want it to be otherwise s. I want it to be a checkbox, but that is not marked. Checkbox outline blank, So you can see now that if I come and check it in action and I say code 1, I can see now that by default it is not done, so it is telling me that it is still blank. I'll make it to be markable. That means you can update it. Now let us come to the color now. If the user is done, I want to be green, but if it's not done, I want it to be black. How do you do that? The same method I use here. I'll just come here, I'll just define a curly braces here, and I'll say that if it's done, I want it to be green, and if it's not done, so it's just like we call it a ternary operator. So like, okay, I'm getting some if and else statements. If it's true, display this. If it is false, do this. So if it's done, make the color to be green. Otherwise, make the color to be black. Let me now, I've defined a style for icon now. So let me now add it. So let me say style property, and now import it. Styles dot what? The class I want to use here, icon. So now let me see what I've done in action. So code 1. Now we have it now, because it's not done, it's currently black, and also because it's not done, it's displaying the outline with a blank tick or a blank mark. Now I want us to now style our text now. I don't want this text to be a touchable opacity. That means I just want the user to be able to click on this. I don't want them to be able to click on this text to mark it as done and not done. So I will remove this text from the child of. I will not make the text touchable opacity to be a child of. Sorry, I will not make the text to be a child of touchable opacity. I will not make it to be a child of touchable opacity. So be style. So now don't forget that I've defined it style for text. So I'm going to say style is equal to style dot text. Now let me do something here. Now the style, if the user is done with the to item, I want to strike through. If he or she is not done, I want to just display it as a normal text. So in this case, I'm going to be using that if else statement again. Now I'm going to be saying, I'll say, okay, if the user, so normally I will apply, I'll just say, okay, I'll define an array. So normally by default, I want to apply this type of text, I want to apply that. But now I want to apply some other styles based on the fact that, okay, if the user is done or not. This style text, I want it to be applied by default. If irrespective of whether the user is done or is not done, it should be applied by default. But if the user is not done, I want to just now. So this is by default. But if the user is not done, I want to say is done. So that is true. It means that only do this if this is true. That means if it is not true, it will not do it. So the reason I have to use this instead of this is because I don't have an if else statement. I only have only one condition. So if it is only true, because if I use this, I need to define a condition for true and to define another condition for false. But in this case, I only have one instance of true. So I'll say apply the styles dot strike true. So that means this will be applied by default. Just get it. don't forget, when I'm applying two things, I need to use an arrow, an array. So this will apply by default, and if it's done, it is only when this is true that this type will be applied, and that's simple logic. Now let us see it in action. Let us say remember. Okay, let me say read 10 books. So if I add, you can see now that it's displaying as flex, and it's displaying on the same row. It's displaying on the same row. Now we are done with the styles of the material icon and the text. Just that we need to be able to click on this and get the user, set the action to is done or is completed. We'll be using this on press, using this touchable opacity on press. So that means on press, when the user press this, you want to update the status to is done, and when the user press it again, you want to bring it back to is not done. So now let us just define that function to do that. We just say const undo toggle done. So it's just like on and off, on and off. So that's why we call it toggle. So but you can call it anything. Just be creative, and at the same time make it more descriptive. Don't just say do this. The question is, what am I doing? So you need to make your function name to be descriptive. Undo toggle done. So that means what I'm doing here, I can, even without reading the code, I can relate that, okay, what I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to switch the is done to on, and if I click it again, switch it off. Now let us have a curly braces. Let us have a curly braces and say, and let us do once it undo toggle done, I'll just say set is done to the opposite. So set is done. So that means when this is set is done. So if it is true, set it to false. If it is false, set it to true. And that is what we are trying to do there. Now let me now attach that undo toggle is done to this undo press on press. So now let's see it in action now. Let's say read book 1. So if I try and click on it, you can see it. If I click on it again, so you can see that we are making progress with our React Native app. Now we have been able to achieve 3 out of our 4 step process. We have been able to create. So if I add more, let me just say add more for lack of words. I say okay, code more. Consider, okay, read more. Consider. So okay, if I say, oh, I'm done with this, let me just mark it. Oh, I'm done with this, let me just mark this. Consider that we have been able to build a nice to-do application. Now I want us to do something here now. We have been able to achieve 3 steps out of our 4 steps process, which is that we have been able to create. That's what we are doing with this test input. We have been able to read. That's why we can get it back. We have been able to update. That's why we can mark it as done and remove the mark. And we have now the last step is that we should be able to delete. So that makes the last step of the CRUD operation. We should be able to delete. And now let us go straight to the functionality that allow us to delete. And that we are going to be using. Let us bring a delete icon using the material icon. So in this case, the name is going to be name. Name will be delete. So delete from material icons. And let's make the size to also be 24, like we did for the edit, like the checkbox. The size to be 24, and let us make the color. Let's make the color to be black. It can be anything. Just be creative with your design. But the major thing is you get the concept. Now you know that we have styled the icon. Like the icons, we have given it a margin right of 10, so that you'll be spacing between the icon and the edit that is coming after it. So let's replicate that same style that we are giving to the edit. Let us replicate it to a style to be equal to styles.icon. When you press it, we need to trigger an action. So let's say on press, let's just say console.log delete. Now let's see that in action. We have just been able to style it and create our icon. So let me just say add more. Now you can see now that we have a delete icon, which is definitely clickable, So if I click on it, that we have not attached any event to it. Now the question now is, the delete function, should we put it here in the to-do item component, or should we put it at the to-do screen component? Now the advice is that you should put it in the to-do screen component. Let us go back to our to-do screen and let us define our delete function. So let us come back to our to-do screen. Now this is where we are adding the to-do. So there's definitely, this is where we should also be deleting the to-do. So let us define the function to delete the to-do. And don't forget that when you are deleting, you should not just delete everything. So you should be able to get the ID of whatever item that you are trying to delete. So I'm expecting the parameter ID. Anytime this delete to-do function is triggered or invoked, I need to get the parameter ID so that I will know what and what to delete. So what I just need to do is, this is where I'm defining the to-do items. So I should just come here and just say, okay, once the item is being deleted, I will then say set to do items, set to do items to do items, the existing item. Now filter it. Now this is part of the higher order array function in JavaScript. Some other higher order array function that we have is map, we have the reduce, and so on and so forth. So but here we want to filter out. So when you are filtering out, it will return any condition that is marked as true. Like, okay, for example, now I'm trying to filter, so each of the elements, each of the iteration will be an item. So now I will say item.id is not equals to id. So here it will only return the values. It will only return the values that satisfy this condition to be true. That means that when you check this condition, this is a condition of if item is not equal to the id that they are passing through. So if it is true, it's going to return every element that has this condition to be true. It will return them as a new array. So you know that now this id, now once it is not equal, that means it's not what we want to delete. It's going to return everything that is not equal to this id as a new array, and now set it to this set to do items. I believe you get it. So filter, it's an higher order JavaScript array function that is used to return elements that satisfy these conditions, that satisfy the defined condition to be true as a new array. So that is what we are doing here. So every once this condition is true, compile them together and return them as a new array and set them as the new to do items. Now, having defined the function or the property of this delete to do, I want us to now pass it as a property to this to do item, because we want to use it in the to do item. So let us now delete to do to be equals to the delete to do function. So now that we are passing a new property, let us now come to the to do item component and now import it. So we are just importing the item before. Let us import delete to do. Now, so that means once this delete, or once you press the delete icon, then we want to call the delete to do. Now let us see that in action. So if I write, okay, write code. Now if I, okay, let me insert more. Let me just insert more for insert more. Okay, read 10 books. So if I click on delete, this is the problem. I'm not passing the ID, so I need to pass the ID of whatever it is I want to delete. So I need to say item.id. So let me refresh again. Let me try it again. Or change this save. Now notice something here. The problem here is that it is actually, like, the problem here is that this is calling the delete to do by default. That means every time I enter something, do something, automatically it will call the delete and it will delete it. So that means I don't want to call it, so I have to divide it as an arrow function, divide as an arrow function, so that will make it not to be calling it by default. So that is just it. So sometimes when you're coding, it's good to put your mind there and just make sure that you are not carried away, because sometimes some of these things can frustrate someone's life. Now let's now enter code one. If you work now, code one now it's there now. Now let us say write new article. Let me edit. So let me just delete one now. So we can see now that our app, our to-do list app is finally working. So we are able to insert, which is great. So new task, to insert it, we are able to read it. That means we are able to get it back. We are able to edit it. That means you can mark it as done. You can mark it as done. That will cross it out, and we can see we are done with this too. We can cross. That's the update, and we can also delete it. Okay, I don't want to say this again. I can delete it. I believe that you have learned a lot working through this React Native syntax, and you have been able to learn how to use React Native components. You have been able to get familiar with some commonly used React Native components, and I believe that you have been able to learn the introduction to React Native syntax. Now, in the subsequent tutorial, I'm going to be showing you advanced level of React Native, where we'll be connecting to database, we'll be connecting to backend, we'll be doing a lot of real life application. This is just a to-do application, that is just a simple code application, building e-commerce applications and so on and so forth. This is just a minor and introduction class. Subsequently, we'll be showing us the advanced side of React Native. Thank you very much for watching.